There is a journey that every empath walks alone, a path that is often invisible to the outside world and rarely acknowledged by those who have never experienced it. It is not written about in most psychology textbooks, and it is rarely discussed in conventional therapy sessions because the empath's experience is so deeply internal that it defies easy description. But if you are an empath watching this, you know exactly what I am talking about because you have lived it. You feel things before they happen, sensing the shifts in energy before anyone else notices. You absorb emotions from rooms the moment you enter them, taking in the mood like a sponge soaking up water. And you have probably spent most of your life being told that you are too sensitive, too emotional, or that you need to toughen up and stop feeling so much. These words have likely been spoken to you by well-meaning friends, frustrated family members, or partners who could not understand why you reacted so deeply to things that barely registered with them. But what if I told you that your sensitivity is not a weakness? That the very qualities that have made you feel different, even broken at times, are actually the foundation of something powerful? What if the very thing that has made you feel different, even broken, is actually a psychological superpower that most people will never understand or possess? A gift that sets you apart from the majority of humanity. The research on highly sensitive persons, pioneered by Dr. Elaine Aron, reveals that approximately 15-20% of the population has a nervous system that is fundamentally different from the rest. You process information more deeply than others, taking in more details and reflecting on them more thoroughly. You notice subtleties that others miss, the small shifts in tone, expression, and energy that reveal the truth beneath the surface. And when it comes to emotional information, you are essentially operating with high-definition perception in a world where most people are still using standard definition, seeing only what is obvious while you perceive the full spectrum. Today, we are exploring the 3 hidden phases every empath must face, a journey that will transform your understanding of yourself and your place in the world. And by the end of this video, you will understand yourself in a completely new way, recognizing the patterns that have shaped your life and the potential that lies ahead. The 3 hidden phases of empathic development are not just abstract concepts, not just interesting ideas to consider. They are real, observable, measurable patterns that explain why some empaths seem to thrive while others remain trapped in cycles of overwhelm and emotional burnout. Research in developmental psychology, particularly the groundbreaking work of Dr. Elaine Aron on highly sensitive persons, reveals that empaths typically progress through 3 distinct developmental phases, each with its own challenges and opportunities. These phases are not arbitrary. They reflect the natural evolution of the empath's relationship with their sensitivity, from confusion to overwhelm to integration. Understanding these phases gives you a roadmap for your own journey, a way to see where you have been and where you are going. The first phase is the most common starting point, the beginning of the empath's journey. Phase 1, the unaware empath. This is where most empaths begin their journey, often without any understanding of what is happening to them. You feel everything intensely, your emotions running deep and wide. You absorb other people's emotions without realizing it, taking on their feelings as if they were your own. You often mistake other people's feelings for your own, unable to distinguish between what you are feeling and what you have absorbed from others. During this phase, empaths are unintentional, emotional sponges, absorbing the emotional states of everyone around them without any conscious awareness of what is happening. This makes them magnets for energy vampires, narcissists, and anyone seeking an emotional host, because they are naturally receptive and giving. You give endlessly, because you have not yet learned that your sensitivity is a finite resource that requires protection and replenishment that you cannot pour from an empty cup. The psychological mechanism at play here is emotional contagion without boundaries, a phenomenon that is both powerful and dangerous. Studies by Hatfield, Cacioppo, and Rapson on emotional contagion show that some individuals are naturally more susceptible to catching others' emotions, their nervous systems more open to the emotional states of those around them. Empaths are at the extreme end of this spectrum, their susceptibility far greater than average. Without awareness, this becomes a significant liability rather than the gift it can become, because the empath is constantly overwhelmed by emotions that are not theirs. The unaware empath lives in a state of chronic emotional overload, absorbing the stress, anxiety, and pain of others without any way to protect themselves. They may feel exhausted after social interactions, drained by conversations that others found energizing. They may experience physical symptoms like headaches, fatigue, or digestive issues that have no apparent medical cause. They may feel anxious or depressed without understanding why, their mood shifting with the emotional atmosphere around them. This is the phase where many empaths begin to feel broken, wondering why life seems so much harder for them than for others. They may try to suppress their sensitivity to become tougher, only to find that this approach leads to even more suffering. The unaware empath is like a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the emotional currents of everyone around them, unable to find their own direction. The second phase is often the most difficult, the breaking point that forces the empath to confront the cost of their sensitivity. Phase 2, the overwhelmed empath. This is the breaking point, the moment when everything becomes too much. It is where the cumulative weight of everything you have absorbed finally becomes too heavy to carry, where the dam finally breaks. Many empaths describe this phase as hitting an emotional wall, a point beyond which they cannot continue as they have been. You might experience complete burnout, a state of total exhaustion that leaves you unable to function. You might experience chronic fatigue, a persistent tiredness that sleep cannot cure. You might experience persistent anxiety, a constant low-level fear that colors everything. Or you might experience depressive episodes, a profound sadness that seems to have no cause. The psychological term for this is empathic distress fatigue, a condition that is remarkably similar to compassion fatigue observed in healthcare professionals who give too much of themselves for too long. Research by Figley on compassion fatigue shows that individuals in caregiving roles often experience this phenomenon when the emotional demands of their work exceed their resources, when they have given more than they have to give. But for empaths, this happens across all life domains, not just professional caregiving, because they are caregiving emotionally, often without conscious choice, in every interaction they have. The overwhelmed empath has been carrying too much for too long, and their nervous system is finally breaking down. This phase is where many empaths either break down completely or begin a profound transformation, because the suffering they experience forces them to change. The suffering is real and often severe, a crushing weight that seems impossible to bear. But it is also the forge in which your greatest strengths are developed, the fire that tempers your spirit. The overwhelmed empath is like a person who has been running for miles without stopping, their legs finally giving out beneath them. They can no longer continue as they have been, but they do not yet know how to be different. This is the crucible of transformation, the moment of crisis that forces change. The third phase is the destination, the place where the empath finally finds balance and power. Phase 3, the integrated empath. This is the destination, though the journey to get here is neither quick nor easy, requiring time, effort, and dedication. The integrated empath has learned to use their sensitivity as a tool rather than being used by it, to harness their gift rather than being overwhelmed by it. They have established boundaries without becoming cold or disconnected, protecting themselves without losing their warmth. They have developed what psychologist Dr. Judith Orloff calls healthy detachment, the ability to sense emotions without necessarily absorbing them, to be aware without being consumed. The integrated empath can walk into a room full of tension and recognize the emotional atmosphere without becoming overwhelmed by it. They can listen to someone's pain without taking it on as their own. They can care deeply without sacrificing themselves in the process. This is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It is about maintaining compassion while protecting your own well-being. The research on mindfulness and emotional regulation strongly supports this transformation, showing that it is possible to change your relationship with your emotions. Studies by Gross on emotion regulation show that individuals who develop reappraisal skills can experience emotions without being controlled by them, can feel without being overwhelmed. This is the empath's ultimate upgrade, maintaining the gift of sensitivity while gaining the protection of boundaries, keeping the superpower while losing the vulnerability. The integrated empath has learned to honor their sensitivity while also protecting themselves from its downsides. They know when to engage and when to step back, when to give and when to preserve their energy. They have found the balance that makes their sensitivity a strength rather than a burden. The research is clear. The 3 hidden phases every empath must face is not just an interesting psychological concept, not just a theory to ponder. It is a real phenomenon that affects your daily life, your relationships, and your well-being, shaping every aspect of your existence. Understanding it gives you something powerful: choice. You can respond from awareness rather than react from programming, making conscious decisions rather than being driven by unconscious patterns. You can navigate relationships with understanding rather than confusion, seeing clearly what is happening rather than being lost in the emotions. The question is not whether these patterns exist in your life. They do, because they are part of the empath's experience. The question is what you will do with this knowledge, how you will use it to transform your life. Will you use it to understand yourself better, to make sense of the experiences that have confused you for so long? Will you use it to improve your relationships, to set boundaries that protect your well-being? Will you use it to protect yourself from those who would exploit your natural tendencies, to recognize the signs of emotional manipulation? Will you use it to develop strengths you did not know you had, to grow into the person you are meant to be? The path forward starts with honest self-assessment, a willingness to look at yourself clearly. Where do you see yourself in what we have discussed today? Are you in phase 1, still unaware of the patterns that are shaping your life? Are you in phase 2, overwhelmed and struggling to find your footing? Or are you beginning to move into phase 3, learning to integrate your sensitivity with healthy boundaries? What patterns resonate with your experience? What aspects of this journey feel familiar to you? What dynamics have you observed in your own relationships? The patterns that repeat themselves over and over. And more importantly, what is one thing you can do differently starting today? One small change that can set you on a new path. The research on behavior change shows that small, specific commitments are far more effective than grand resolutions. That incremental progress is more sustainable than dramatic transformation. Do not try to transform everything at once, because that approach often leads to burnout and disappointment. Pick one insight from this video, one idea that resonated with you. One pattern to watch for, one behavior that you recognize in yourself, one behavior to modify, one small change that can make a difference. And start there, because that is where real change begins. Remember, knowledge without action is just entertainment, a pleasant diversion that does not change anything. But knowledge with consistent action is genuine transformation, a shift that reshapes your life. You now have the knowledge, the understanding of the phases and patterns that shape the empath's journey. The next move is entirely yours, because no one can make this journey for you. Choose wisely, because your choices will determine your future. If this resonated with you, subscribe to Human Behavior Intelligence, because this channel exists to help you understand yourself and others on a deeper level, to provide the insights you need to grow. Every video combines research-backed psychology with practical insights you can actually use, bridging the gap between theory and practice. The next video drops soon, and you will not want to miss it, because it will take you even deeper into the fascinating complexity of human behavior. Until then, stay observant, stay curious, and never stop learning about the fascinating complexity of human behavior, because the more you understand, the more you can grow. And remember, your sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a superpower, a gift that sets you apart. The journey from unaware empath to integrated empath is not easy, but it is worth it. Because at the end of that journey is the person you were always meant to be. The person who feels deeply but is not controlled by their feelings. The person who understands others but does not lose themselves in that understanding. The person who gives freely but knows when to stop. The person who has finally found the balance that makes their sensitivity a strength rather than a burden. That person is waiting for you, and the path to becoming them is the 3 hidden phases of empathic development. Embrace the journey, because it leads to the most important destination of all, yourself.